It's funny how things fall apart. That's how my 5 years with Elena started crumbling on a completely unremarkable Wednesday. No anniversaries, no special occasions, just us and the leftovers from our go-to-Thai place. Then she dropped the bomb. I think we need a break. Now, I'm not exactly prone to overreacting. I've always been pretty steady, built my life one brick at a time. I own my place, have a decent career in IT, and I like things uncomplicated. So her little declaration threw me for a split second, maybe two. Then it registered. Elena wanted space. Okay, fine. But not here, not in my space. I kept my voice level. I set down my fork, looked right at her, and said, okay, if you need a break, take it. But this is my house, so you'll need to pack your things and figure out where you're going to stay. The look on her face was like I'd suggested she relocate to Mars. Wait, are you serious? She asked, completely stunned. Yeah, I'm serious, I told her. What did she expect? Me to just hang around while she went on some soul-searching journey? I'm not interested in being anyone's backup plan. To her credit, she didn't put up a huge fight. Maybe she thought I would try to convince her to stay, beg for some explanation, but I wasn't about to beg anyone to be with me, especially not Elena. By the end of the night, she'd packed a suitcase and was on the phone to her sister for a ride. She stood at the door for a minute, looking like she was about to say something. But I just opened the door wider, holding it open for her. That's my philosophy, really. If someone wants to leave, let them. Don't try to trap them, don't suffocate them with neediness. Just let them go. After she left, the house was quiet. I ended up sitting in the living room, staring at the half-eaten pad thai on the coffee table. It didn't feel like some dramatic heartbreak scene. It was more like a shrug. I wasn't devastated. I was just annoyed. I'd built this life, a good life, where she had every opportunity to be happy. And instead of talking to me about whatever was bothering her, she took the easy way out, a break. The next day, I gathered up the few things she'd left behind. Some toiletries, a couple of her favorite hoodies she always stole from me, and her well-worn copy of Pride and Prejudice. I packed it all into a box and put it in the hallway closet. If she wanted it back, she could ask. I wasn't going to chase after her with a care package. Life without Elena didn't change all that much at first. I still woke up at 6 a.m., went to the gym, and spent my days working on my client projects. The house was quieter, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It meant more time to think, more time to focus on what I wanted. It's not like I was completely indifferent to Elena, I just wasn't going to let her absence derail my entire existence. What bothered me, though, was how easily she'd walked away. It made me start second-guessing everything. I replayed the last few months in my head, trying to figure out if I'd missed some crucial detail. Were there signs that she was unhappy that I hadn't picked up on? I honestly didn't see it coming. Were there signs? Maybe. But from where I stood, things were okay. Not perfect, sure, but definitely not circling the drain. We didn't bicker constantly, and when we did, it was the usual couple stuff, arguing about takeout choices or who forgot to put the lid back on the toothpaste. The typical everyday annoyances. Elena never hinted at feeling trapped or restless. Never even a whisper that she was considering hitting the brakes. She just decided. And that's what really got under my skin. Relationships are supposed to be a team effort. You don't just unilaterally declare a timeout. You talk it out, you work through it together. But she didn't give me that courtesy. She made up her mind and, I guess, expected me to just hang around waiting for her to decide if she wanted to come back. No thanks. The fallout was predictable. Over the next few days, I started getting calls and texts from well-meaning friends and family who'd gotten wind of Elena's little disappearing act. My sister was the first to call. She just left? Like that, she asked, sounding more shocked than I think I even was. I gave her the abridged version, and she was quick to tell me I'd done the right thing by not groveling for Elena to stay. Don't let her walk all over you, she said, her voice laced with protective anger. If she doesn't appreciate you, that's her problem. Then there was Alex, my best friend, basically my personal, unpaid therapist. He stopped by a couple of nights later, ostensibly to check in. He's not one for emotional speeches, but he did drop some truth on me. You dodged a bullet, man. If she's this wishy-washy now, imagine how she'd handle a real crisis. That hit home. If Elena couldn't handle the small bumps in the road, what would have happened when things got seriously tough? What if we'd been married? What if kids had been in the picture? It was better to find out now, before things got even more complicated. By the end of the week, I'd reached a kind of resigned acceptance. If Elena needed space, fine, she could have all the space she wanted. I wasn't going to chase after her or waste my energy wondering what she was doing or who she was doing it with. Here's the truth about people who say they need space. It's rarely about self-discovery. It's usually about scouting out other options, seeing if the grass is greener elsewhere. And if they think they can just waltz back into my life once they're done shopping around, they're sorely mistaken. I knew I deserved more than that, and I sure as hell wasn't going to settle for someone who didn't fully recognize my worth. So, I kept moving forward, confident I'd made the right decision. And honestly, it felt pretty damn good. It wasn't long before the rumor mill started churning. When someone moves out, especially in a tight-knit neighborhood with a shared social circle, gossip spreads like wildfire. I'm not the type to broadcast my personal drama. I wasn't about to walk around announcing, "Hey, Elena wanted a break, so she's gone now." But apparently she wasn't as discreet. It started subtly. About a week after Elena left, a friend, Jordan, texted me. "Hey man, hope you're doing okay. Ran into Elena down at the dock last night. She seemed different." Different? What the hell was that supposed to mean? I didn't respond right away because I didn't have the energy to dissect the possible implications. And I sure as hell wasn't going to pry for more details from Jordan. Let her be different. It was none of my business anymore. Lauren's call came a couple of days later. "I wasn't sure if I should even tell you this," she began, which is never a good sign. It always means you're about to hear something you'd rather not. "I saw Elena at the tavern last night with some guy. They looked cozy." Cozy. The word stuck with me. Not because I gave a damn who she was with. I really meant it when I said she was free to do whatever she wanted, but because it confirmed my suspicions. This break wasn't about finding herself or whatever line she'd fed me. It was a scouting mission, a look at the options. And she was clearly moving fast. I thanked Lauren, said I appreciated the heads up, and hung up. Mad? No, I didn't think so. Jealous? Definitely not. Insulted? Maybe a little. 5 years, and the first thing she does is grab a drink with some random dude. It wasn't about wanting her back, it was about basic decency. The whispers didn't stop with Lauren. Over the next week, I kept getting these unwanted updates. Janice, my neighbor, cornered me while I was mowing the lawn. "Hey Noah," she said, leaning on the fence with that look in her eye like she had a piping hot piece of gossip. "I saw Elena jogging with some guy yesterday morning. New guy, right? Haven't seen him around." I just shrugged. "Probably," I said. "Doesn't matter to me." Janice gave me this look like she couldn't decide if I was genuinely indifferent or just putting on a show. The truth was, it didn't matter. If Elena wanted to run around with strangers or play the field, that was her business. I had my own stuff to deal with, like keeping the lawn in shape and focusing on my own life. It was almost comical how I wasn't even trying to find out what Elena was up to. People just kept volunteering the information. It's like when you try not to think about something and then it's all you can think about. These updates kept landing right in my lap, uninvited. The clincher, though, came from Elena herself, or rather, her social media. Let's be clear, I wasn't stalking her. I opened Instagram one night to check something unrelated and her profile popped up in my feed. You know how the algorithm works. It figures out what it thinks you want to see. Apparently, it thought I wanted to see Elena's stories. There she was, laughing in the background of someone else's photo, sitting across from some guy I didn't recognize. The guy had the try-hard look, fitted shirt, meticulously maintained stubble, the kind of guy who probably spends more time taking selfies than actually living life. They were at that trendy restaurant downtown, one of those places Elena always wanted us to go but never bothered to actually organize. Seeing her there, smiling like she didn't have a worry in the world, just made me shake my head. It wasn't really hurt. More disappointed. After all the time together, you'd think she'd take a moment to reflect or, I don't know, show some respect for what we had. Instead, she was out there acting like a single woman who'd never been in a serious relationship. It was like those years, like I never existed. I killed Instagram that day and haven't given her profile a second glance since. Honestly, I didn't need to. Whatever she was doing, let her do it. I had zero desire to be part of her audience, watching her life unfold like some reality show. But one thing that really stuck in my craw was the way she was painting the whole break situation. A few days later, Rachel, a friend we both had, calls me up one evening. "So, Elena told me you guys are on a break," she says, and I could practically hear the skepticism dripping from her voice. "But she made it sound like it was your idea." My idea? The audacity made me chuckle. "Rachel, I don't know what fairy tale she spun for you, but let's be crystal clear, Elena initiated the break, not me. I just told her she couldn't exactly hang around here while she found herself. She needed space, so I, being the generous guy I am, granted it to her." Rachel sighed heavily into the phone. "Yeah, that's not quite how she's presenting it. She's acting like you kicked her to the curb or something along those lines." It didn't exactly blindside me. Elena had this unique talent for twisting narratives to make herself the injured party, the damsel in distress. but I wasn't about to expend any energy correcting her version of reality. If people wanted to buy into her drama, fine by me. The people who truly mattered knew the score, and at the end of the day, that's all that mattered. The truly ironic part of all this? The more I heard snippets of Elena's journey of self-discovery, the more confident I felt in my decision to let her walk. She wasn't the person I thought she was, or maybe she was, and I was just too blind to see it. Either way, I didn't feel like I was losing something precious. If anything, I felt like I'd skillfully avoided a future of constant turmoil. Every time someone chirped about another new guy she was seen with, I just nodded, acknowledged the information, and mentally moved on. It actually became a running joke between me and my buddy, Alex. "Dude, she's cycling through them faster than all-you-can-eat wings," he said one night, and I cracked up because it wasn't far from the harsh truth. Elena wasn't finding herself. She was simply trying to plug whatever emotional hole she had with fleeting attention from random guys she encountered. And that, thankfully, was no longer my circus to manage. Toward the end of the second week, the constant whispers and updates started to fade out. Maybe people got bored with being my personal newsfeed, or maybe Elena's escapades lost their initial entertainment value. Either way, I felt a surge of relief wash over me. I didn't need a play-by-play of her dating life. I was far too occupied with constructing my own life, brick by brick. Here's the unvarnished truth: when someone shows you their true colors, believe them. Elena showed me in no uncertain terms that she wasn't truly committed to us, to what we had. She was itching to see what other options were out there, and I wasn't about to stand in her way, but I sure as hell wasn't going to sit around, twiddling my thumbs, waiting for her to come to some grand realization. I had my house, my routines, my sense of self-respect. And those things were worth infinitely more than any relationship with someone who didn't have the foggiest idea what they wanted. 3 weeks after Elena packed her bags, I got a text from her, completely out of the blue. Just 4 words: "Can we meet up?" No polite "how are you doing?" or any semblance of concern. Just straight to the point, like demanding a refund. Honestly, I chuckled to myself when I saw it pop up on my screen. After all the dust had settled, now she wanted to have a conversation. I wasn't about to jump at the opportunity to sit down and dissect whatever drama was brewing in her mind, but I'm not one to leave things hanging unresolved either. So I replied with a simple "when and where." She suggested the park we used to frequent, that little haven downtown where we'd spend countless hours pretending real life wasn't as chaotic as it actually was. I agreed, mostly out of morbid curiosity. I wanted to hear what kind of flimsy justification she would try to concoct this time. Part of me already knew this wouldn't be some heartfelt apology or confession. It would be some poorly thought-out attempt to make herself feel better, to rewrite history to her liking. The day of the meeting arrived, and I showed up 10 minutes early. Not because I was particularly eager to see her, but because I refused to give her the satisfaction of arriving first and feeling like she held some kind of psychological advantage. I grabbed my coffee on the way and settled on a bench near the large fountain, sipping slowly as I waited, bracing myself for whatever performance she was about to put on. When she finally showed, 2 things hit me immediately. First, she looked like she'd been running a marathon inside her own head. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, no makeup, and she was wearing that damn oversized sweater, the one she always wore when she was trying to hide something, usually guilt. Second, she seemed smaller. Not physically, but like some of the fight had gone out of her. She definitely wasn't carrying herself with the same confidence she'd had when she walked out 3 weeks ago. She spotted me across the cafe, gave a sort of awkward wave, and started making her way over. I stayed put. Just leaned back in my chair and gave her a nod. If she wanted to fix this, she was going to have to put in the effort. I wasn't about to make it easy. "Thanks for meeting me," she said after she'd sat down. I didn't say anything. Just raised an eyebrow, letting the silence hang there, waiting for her to launch into whatever speech she'd prepared. Let her feel a little uncomfortable. She earned it. And she did. She launched into this long, rambling explanation about how she'd felt lost and confused when she'd asked for the break. She tried to frame it as some kind of altruistic gesture, like she was doing me a favor by taking a step back to figure herself out. "I didn't want to drag you down while I was sorting through my feelings," she said, avoiding my gaze. That got a cynical chuckle out of me. Drag me down? I was perfectly fine. My life was stable. She was the one who was a mess, flailing around trying to figure out what she wanted. And somehow she twisted it into some selfless act. "I just needed time," she continued, "to see if I could be the best version of myself, for us. For us." Like all this navel-gazing had been for my benefit. I nearly rolled my eyes. When she finally ran out of steam, I said, keeping my voice even, "So, how'd that time work out for you?" That clearly caught her off guard. She blinked a few times like she hadn't expected me to be so direct. It's been enlightening, she said hesitantly. I realized that I was taking you for granted, that I wasn't appreciating everything you bring to the relationship. I didn't say anything, just nodded, urging her to continue. I wasn't about to throw her a lifeline. She dug this hole she could climb out herself. And she added, her voice dropping almost to a whisper, I made some mistakes during the break. Mistakes? That was her word? Not choices, not decisions, but mistakes, like she just tripped and accidentally fell into another guy's arms. I heard about your mistakes, Elena, I said calmly, not letting any emotion leak into my voice. People talk. I know about the bar, the restaurant, the jogging partner. Her face flushed red and she started stammering. I didn't mean for it to happen like that. I thought I needed to see if I was missing something. I shook my head. You weren't missing anything. You had everything you needed and you threw it away to see if you could find someone better. That's on you. She looked like she was about to cry, but I just couldn't muster up any sympathy. She made the choice to walk away and now she had to deal with the fallout. I realize now how much I care about you, she said, her voice shaky. I want us to work things out. I want to come home. There it was, the big reveal. She wanted back in. But not because she'd suddenly had some epiphany about my amazing qualities. No, it was because the shiny new fantasy she'd been chasing hadn't lived up to the hype. Maybe those other guys hadn't treated her as well as I did. Maybe they weren't as patient or as stable. Whatever the reason, it didn't matter. She wasn't asking to come back because she loved me. She was asking to come back because she was disappointed with her other options. And that wasn't good enough. Why now, Elena? The question hung in the air between us. It wasn't an accusation, more a weary resignation. She was asking because, deep down, she knew I was the guy she could always count on. I leaned back, the park bench digging slightly into my back. No, I finally said, the word feeling surprisingly solid. Her eyes flickered, a mix of surprise and something else I couldn't quite decipher. No, I repeated, wanting to make sure it landed. You wanted space, you got it. You don't get to just waltz back in because things didn't pan out the way you expected. She started to protest, a familiar litany of justifications and what-ifs. I cut her off. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the park. I stood up, the movement a decisive break. Take care, Elena, I said, and walked away. I didn't look back. Not even a glance. I didn't wait to hear her call my name. In my mind, the book was closed. She made her choices and I was finally accepting them. The biggest lesson I've learned through all of this? You can't let someone treat you like an afterthought. If they don't see your value, don't stick around hoping they eventually will. Move on, don't dwell. That was my intention, my only option for self-preservation. After that conversation in the park, it felt like a physical weight lifted from my shoulders. It wasn't just about rejecting her, or even simply walking away. It was a declaration of my own self-worth, a reclaiming of the ground I had ceded. I hadn't realized how burdened I'd been since she first uttered those words, I need a break. But it was over. No more internal debates, no nagging doubts. I drove straight home and the first thing I did was tackle the hallway closet. Her box of belongings. It went straight into the trunk. From there, I drove to her sister's apartment and left it on the porch without a word. No text, no explanatory note. That was her problem now. I didn't want her stuff or her memory lingering in my space any longer than necessary. The following days brought a new sense of calm, a quiet settling into a rhythm that was distinctly my own. The house felt different without Elena's presence, but in a good way. Quieter, definitely, but also lighter, more peaceful. I no longer had to brace myself for her passive-aggressive sighs when I left a dish in the sink or endure her endless stream of suggestions for improving the house. The house was mine again, and I made a conscious effort to make it feel like mine. I rearranged the living room furniture, got rid of those awful throw pillows she'd insisted on buying, even replaced the shower curtain with something I actually liked. Small changes, maybe, but they made a world of difference. Each little adjustment felt like another step in reclaiming my space, my life. One evening, Alex came over. He hadn't been to the house since Elena left, and the first thing he said was, "Dude, this place feels so much better." "I don't know, lighter." I chuckled. "Yeah, it's amazing what happens when you eliminate the primary source of negativity." He grinned. "Man, you're absolutely thriving. What's the plan now? Are we going full-on bachelor pad?" I shook my head, smiling. "No, I'm not turning this into some party zone. I just want to focus on myself for a while, you know? Get back to the things that make me happy." Even work became a more fulfilling space. Without the constant distractions and emotional turmoil of a failing relationship, I found myself diving deeper into projects, actually enjoying them again. My focus sharpened, my productivity went through the roof, and I started getting noticed. My boss even pulled me aside one day and said, "Whatever you're doing differently, keep it up. It's definitely paying off." It's funny how cutting out the dead weight in your personal life can allow everything else to fall into place. The most significant change, however, was internal. I started to notice a clarity in my mind that had been absent for a long time. It was as if Elena's drama had been taking up valuable mental real estate, and now that space was free. I was finally free. I wasn't constantly dissecting my every move, trying to anticipate what she wanted or needed from me. The constant low-grade anxiety about whether I'd inadvertently trigger some explosion on her part had subsided. Of course, she still drifted into my thoughts occasionally. It wasn't as if she'd been completely erased from my memory, but those instances became fewer and less frequent as the weeks passed. And when I did think of her, the emotion attached wasn't anger or sadness. It was more like a detached sense of indifference. That feeling really solidified when mutual acquaintances would bring her up in conversation. I remember one friend mentioning seeing her at some party, and my response was a simple, "Good for her." I didn't pry for details. I had absolutely no interest in knowing who she was with or what she was doing. It just didn't matter anymore. About a month after our last encounter, I realized I felt fundamentally different. Not because I'd drastically changed as a person, but because I'd finally rediscovered who I was at my core, the version of me that didn't have to constantly filter myself or make endless concessions for someone else's comfort. A surprising and welcome aspect of this whole ordeal was the realization of how much inner strength I possessed. When Elena walked out, I could have easily crumbled. I could have spiraled downwards, indulged in self-pity, or desperately tried to win her back, but I didn't. I stood my ground, kept moving forward, and unintentionally built a better, more authentic life in the process. It wasn't about proving anything to her, or frankly, to anyone else. It was about proving something crucial to myself, and I succeeded. Sometimes the most beneficial thing you can do for your own well-being is to release whatever is holding you captive, whether it's a destructive relationship, a stagnant situation, or simply a limiting mindset that's preventing you from progressing. Letting go can be the most liberating experience imaginable. For me, that meant finally saying goodbye to Elena and all the associated baggage. And honestly, it was worth every bit of it. Now, standing a little taller, feeling a little lighter, I can confidently say that I made the right choice. About 6 weeks had passed since Elena and I had any contact whatsoever. I wasn't obsessively checking her social media profiles, I wasn't speculating about her activities, and I definitely wasn't missing her. As far as I was concerned, that chapter was firmly closed. So, when I received a text message from an unfamiliar number saying, "Hey, this is Ryan. Can we talk? It's about Elena," my initial reaction was to ignore it completely. Ryan? Who the hell was Ryan? I wasn't looking for any drama, and the mere thought of being pulled back into Elena's sphere of influence made me instinctively recoil. But curiosity, that persistent little devil, got the better of me. I sent back a terse, "What do you want?" His response was almost immediate. "It's better if we talk in person. Can we meet?" I was completely in the dark about what this guy wanted, but there was something about the message that felt off. If Elena herself had tried to reach out, I wouldn't have given her the time of day. But this felt different, more urgent. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop downtown the following day. At worst, I figured I'd waste 30 minutes of my life. At best, I'd get some insight into why the stranger thought it was necessary to involve me. The next afternoon, I walked into the cafe and immediately spotted him. He was sitting at a table tucked away in the corner, nervously fiddling with his coffee cup, early 30s, clean-cut, the type of guy who probably devotes a significant portion of his free time to updating his LinkedIn profile. I sat down across from him, bypassing any polite formalities. "You Ryan?" I asked. He nodded, looking even more anxious than I had anticipated. "Yeah, thanks for meeting me," he said, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. "I wasn't sure if I should reach out, but I felt like you deserved to know the truth." "The truth?" I leaned back in my chair and crossed my arms, waiting. "All right then. What's the truth?" Ryan took a deep breath as if he were preparing to make some grand confession. "So, I've been seeing Elena," he began, his eyes fixed on the table. Or, I was anyway. I raised an eyebrow but remained silent, waiting for him to continue. It wasn't a shock, not really. I'd been aware Elena was seeing other guys after we split. The thing was, I hadn't bothered to connect names or faces to any of them. Ryan was just another dude in a long line. He must have picked up on my lack of reaction because he kept going, the words tumbling out faster. "The thing is," he said, "she told me you guys were completely done when we started seeing each other. Like a formality. She said you were emotionally checked out of the relationship long before that." I almost laughed out loud. Emotionally checked out? I just shook my head. That's not how it happened. She asked for a break. I told her to pack her stuff. End of story. Ryan looked genuinely uncomfortable, which I'll admit gave me a little satisfaction. It was dawning on him that he'd been manipulated. She made it seem like you were the one who didn't care, he admitted, like she had no choice but to move on. Classic Elena, always twisting the story to make herself the wrong party. It didn't surprise me, but it confirmed that nothing about her had changed. Why are you even telling me all this? I asked, leaning forward slightly. What's your point? Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. Because I started to notice inconsistencies, little things that didn't add up. She'd mention you casually like you were still part of the equation. She would tell stories about your house, about things you used to do together, and it didn't fit with the over-you narrative she gave me. I didn't say anything, letting him dig himself in deeper. The more he talked, the clearer it became that he'd been strung along, just like I had, but I had figured it out a lot faster. She wasn't straight with either of us, he said. She made me believe you were the bad guy, but I get it now. She was hedging her bets, keeping her options open. When things started to fall apart between us, she started talking about wanting to reconnect with you. There it was, the actual reason for this meeting. Ryan wasn't seeking absolution, he was burned and wanted company in his misery. Let me make sure I understand, I said, keeping my tone even. She told you we were finished, made you think I didn't give a damn, and then tried to use me as a fallback when things with you went south? He nodded, looking ashamed. Pretty much. I leaned back in my chair.